despite the scream name, my name is Beth Andes, and I'm a member of the West Virginia Wellness Board. I had the pleasure of meeting Kathi this past year, and it's a great opportunity to have this evening with her so she can share all the wonderful information that she's so passionate about. So I'll take a little time here to read her bio, just to catch us all up. So Kathi is an integrative nutrition coach. She has an extensive background in functional nutrition, therapeutic carbohydrate restriction, life coaching, cognitive behavioral therapy, and positive psychology. She is committed to helping people optimize their health by transforming their foundational habits through awareness, simplicity, and the individual needs of her clients. Her own journey of losing over 100 pounds has been featured on regional and national levels, and it drives her to educate and support the ripple effect of creating lasting change for individuals as well as the greater community. So Kathi is currently the head nutrition coach at the Ryan Fern's Healthplex, and she's also the host of West Liberty University's TV show, Healthy You. And Kathi, take it away.
Thanks, Beth. Wow, it's weird sitting here hearing all of that. So as Beth said, being, I'm often referred to as a nutrition coach, and really, Jennifer, if you want to start the slides, I kind of just lost the screen here.
All right, here, let me find it here.
So first of all, thank you all for joining us tonight. I'm so honored to be part of this, and really helping people create that health and vitality is super important to me. So this is just another way for me to share my passion to really help that. And I actually like to call myself a professional optimizer. I'm certified in optimizing life coaching, and I'm often referred to as a nutrition coach, and that kind of puts me into a little bit of a smaller category than what I actually get to do with each person that I work with. So, nutrition is really, such an important part of such an important piece of the puzzle. And so I have, through my own journey, as Beth said, of losing 100 pounds, it's really been about not only understanding what works for me, but really researching and studying from all different aspects on how I can help my clients achieve optimal health for themselves, because it's so much bigger than just food. Food can actually just, either enhance or degrade the quality of our life, but it's not the only piece of the puzzle. And Jennifer, if you'll click to the next screen, you'll actually get to see what it was like for me. That's me, not even at my heaviest point. I actually got heavier after my daughter was born. And, I actually think that being overweight and going through the journey of losing weight was one of the greatest things that's happened to me. There's been, a lot of great things that have happened in my life, but, it really, I struggled through a big part of my life with depression, and, I had some mental health issues, never had a weight issue till I had kids. So I can blame that on them. But, it really was, I never really learned how to, take care of me in the way that, helped me be the healthiest version of me. So losing that weight was such a pivotal turning point in my life. It helped me understand how food played a role in my depression, but also how healthy habits could help me, move away from that, and therefore into a direction to be a better version of me and help other people along the way. So it's been 18 years this month, actually, since I've had that weight off. And, it's a challenge every day, and we'll talk a little bit about that today, but, it's never about perfection. It's just about cultivating those habits of, really looking at what helps us optimize our overall health. And so, that's led me on the path to really study from different modalities of being healthy. So, as Beth said, functional nutrition, actually functional diagnostic nutrition is my background in training with integrative nutrition. And so diagnostic nutrition is looking for root cause symptoms of what the bigger problems are. So when people have health issues, instead of just looking at the symptom of the issue or the surface issue, it's really looking at the root cause. And that root cause sometimes is food, sometimes it's something going on in their life. And, that's kind of led me down the rabbit hole of studying, as I said, different modalities, cognitive behavioral therapy, positive psychology, ancient wisdom, different types of nutritional studies, and looking at it from different aspects. So I've been down the journey of being a vegetarian, almost vegan, and learned, as Beth also said, therapeutic carbohydrate restriction. I do a lot of work around a well-formulated ketogenic diet. And it's always about the N=1. It's, the science can tell us so much, but we really have to look at what comes down to the individual. And it's all about, looking at the whole person. So it's like whole life nutrition, because it is really everything. Life is what feeds us, food is what fuels us, and we have to integrate the two together. So, and my goal also is to educate and facilitate growth with my clients. I actually started in this field working for a weight loss company after having begun my own weight loss journey with that company. And, I worked for them for 6.5 years. I did national and regional PR for them. And, I realized that we weren't actually teaching people anything. We were creating a dependency on a system that was really designed to fail, because it was all about looking at some of the wrong things. And, it became an integrity issue for me. I felt like I really wasn't serving my clients very well. So I actually stepped back and went back to school so I could really learn how to understand, to work with the individual. So that's really how my passion started. And it just lights me up inside when I get to see that ripple effect in my own life, my husband's life, my family's life, and then the people that I get to work with. So if you'll go to the next slide. How do you define healthy? We have so many different measures of health in our society. And so many people think, well, if I get to a certain weight, I'll be healthy. Or, if I wear a certain size. And often in my intake, when I'm working with someone, I ask them these questions. And then also ask them, what would that look like for you? Or what would it feel like to be that ideal body weight or a certain clothing size? Or, because we often idealize what those things look like. And, we really don't have, we'll look at other people or external sources, but not really look at what that means to us as the individual. And so often, if we look at the scale, will change us. So a lot of people will think about health as that, scale number, and we get obsessed over it. In fact, most of my clients, I have them get rid of their scale, because that really can slow down the process. Quite honestly, the people who get on the scale more typically take longer to get to their goal, if they get there, because they're fixated on the wrong thing. So we have to really take an honest look at how we define healthy. It can include all of those things, but it should not be limited to, and we really need to look beyond those things. So the next slide, please. We also want to think about how we define our progress. Is it that number on the scale? And again, going back to that weight issue, I'll ask people what kind of, where have you been with your weight, and where do you want to go? And then I ask them, when was the last time they were at that weight? Or, what was different when they were there? And so we just really want to get in touch with what those definitions of progress are and kind of get some clarity around them. We all want to change the health markers, especially right now. Health is in the forefront, in the midst of this COVID-19 pandemic. If there's one thing we all know is our health is at risk, or something that we need to attend to. We can't keep it on the back burner anymore. We have to really identify what is true health and how we can start to create it right here and right now. And each moment that goes by that we don't pay attention to our health is a moment wasted. Life is too short to feel anything but our best. But we have to pay attention to it, and we have to cultivate that into our lifestyle. So, how do we define our progress? How do we define healthy is a really important starting place to optimizing our overall health. Next slide, please. So when we're thinking about creating health, I want people to shift away from just the goal, because if it's a number, if it's a measurement, if it's one of those health markers, we want to start to think a little bit broader, because to create lasting results, often if we're just looking at that goal, we're missing the most important part of the process. Too often I would see people fixate on a goal, whatever that goal was. But if they aren't paying attention to who they're becoming along the way, or who they're being along the way, then they're less likely to stay there. So it's really about, understanding that we are looking for lasting results. We've all experienced the short-term win, and maybe we get to a certain weight, or we bring down our blood sugar, or we change a clothing size. But if we don't know how we got there, then how are we going to know how to stay there? So it's really about paying attention to how we create those lasting results. And one of the things that I do with my clients is look at kind of in a backwards direction. In my earlier days working with people, nutrition was always the forefront, obviously, for me, at least, when I would start working with people. But that core identity, especially if it's someone going through a pretty significant health transformation, was the toughest thing to change. So for me, having lost 100 pounds, that, excuse my language, but that inner fat girl, man, she could rear her ugly head at times. And, that identity was something that I, had related to for so long, of being the overweight girl, or feeling just so bad about my appearance. So that identity was something that was pretty tough to shake. And so in the process of working with people, and, through my education and understanding and my own experiences and experiences with clients, I figured we've got it a little bit backwards. We have to look at the identity that we actually want to create. So if you'll click to the next slide. Creating lasting results is all about who we are committed to being. So often I hear people say, when I get to the goal, life will be great, which isn't true. Wherever we go, there we are, right? So it's who we are committed to being. So we have to take an identity check with, what that healthiest version of ourselves actually looks like. So think about that. And, often I'll have people do a free writing experiment with that. What does the healthiest version of me look like? And just write that out. And if you can't do it about yourself, think about what that kind of ideal healthy person that, we all have that in our mind, of what true health looks like. So, spend some time and really write that out. What is that picture? What is the vision of that healthiest version of you, or the healthiest version of someone? because sometimes at first it's a little hard to stand in it as the first person. So looking at, like, what does true health look like? What kind of things does that healthy person do? What do they look like? What do they wear? What do they eat? How do they behave? How do they think? What kind of activities are they doing? And kind of getting really clear with that. Spend some time with that, because our identity is actually our repeated beingness. So we want to close that gap from who we are right now to who that person that we want to be is. And when we create that identity, and this is an exercise that I still do every day, every single morning, or just about every morning, not always perfect at it. I actually write out my identity and who I want to be in my energy, who I want to be in my work, and who I want to show up in love, with the people that I love and care about. And I write that out every morning. What kind of virtues embody that person? What kind of things that I do? And it's a really quick exercise for me, but it's getting really clear about that identity so we can embody it. Because if we don't know what we want, then how can we get there? So instead of waiting till we make all these external changes, we want to start at the source. We want to go into that being that we really want to create. So whatever it is, we think about that as a goal. For people, often they'll set goals and they'll write down all the things they need to do to reach that goal. And that's a useful exercise. But when we actually write down who we need to be, it's a little bit of a different feeling. And then when we repeatedly show up as that person, even though the results may not be there, that's how we actually create that process. So next slide, please. If we think about that, our identity is our repeated beingness, and that's what makes us who we are. So that works in the direction of positive change, but that also works in the direction of creating where we really don't want to be. So, taking that honest look at where we are right now. Our daily habits are what create the sum of our results. And each choice in those habits, do I go for that walk this morning? Do I eat something healthy, or do I just grab something quickly? Do I go to bed at a decent time or stay up late to watch another Netflix show? Each choice is a vote for the person that we want to become. And if we're getting really clear on that healthy version of us that we want to become, and commit choice by choice by choice to embody that, that actually helps us not only make the changes, but create the identity shift and recreate ourselves as we go along the process. Because it was always taught to me that it started out from the outside in, and I actually believe that it goes from the inside out. So if you go to the next slide. So we want to think about, how are you feeling right now? What do your habits, energy, and mindset indicate? And we're in this time where we actually are forced to reflect a little bit, because the busyness of our life, that kind of flow that we were in came to a screeching halt, at least at some point. And for some people, it really ramped up and we got into more chaos. But, really think about, this has been an opportunity for us to really take a step back and look like, wow, where am I? Am I where I want to be? And a lot of times I hear people say, well, I'm too busy to meal prep. I'm too busy to get to the gym. I'm too busy to stop and reflect and take time for me. I've got to take care of everybody else. And while that may still be true in the midst of this shift, it's also given us a time to really take a step back and say, what habits can I do now? Because some of our habits and systems that we had in place have changed. So, taking that honest look at, what are your habits right now? Where is your energy? And where's your mindset? And where do you want to be? Because we can't really create effective change and optimize our health if we're not willing to take an honest look at where we are. And once we start to create that identity of who we really want to be, there's that great statement by Abraham Maslow where what one can be, one must be. And here's the really cool thing. If we can envision it, then we can create it. Because if we can envision, or if we're even called to be that healthier person, if it's in us, if that desire is in us, then we have the ability to achieve it. And we're not going to feel our best until we are working toward actualizing that. People feel their worst, sure, because some of their fundamentals that we're going to talk about are off. But part of the picture is that we're not being that version of ourselves than we actually thought that we, or that we actually want to be. I love the Stephen Covey. Some of you may be familiar with this. Stephen Covey talks about the eulogy experience and where we see ourselves at the end of our life and what people are talking about and what they're saying about us. And I've also heard it defined as a quick trip to hell, where we're at that funeral, we're hearing people talk about us, and in walks this person that everybody looks at. And as you turn and look at that person, and you see this radiant person walk into the room, and you realize it's that version of you that you could have become if you actually followed through on those things that you say, I should do, or I want to do, but we never put forth that effort to really move toward. So think about that. Like, what is that best version of you? Create that identity, take an honest look at where you are right now, and then we can start to close that gap from who you are right now to who you want to be, just moment by moment. Next slide, please. So as we get that clear picture of wanting to be healthy, again, whether it's in the first person or in that ideal healthy person that you think of, we want to understand that optimizing our health comes from creating awareness through some core fundamentals. I've told people all along, we find our greatest success through simplicity. We hear so much noise. We hear soundbite nutrition. We hear all these quick tips and strategies. And a lot of times it's people trying to get our attention to follow their protocol. Now, I'm a coach, so I definitely want to help people get there. But we don't need to buy into the gimmicks, or there really isn't a complicated strategy, a formula that somebody will create that will be the magic wand. The magic wand actually comes when we start to create awareness of the fundamentals that really are the foundational principles of everything good that comes in our life. Truly, when we start to look at these fundamentals and care and cultivate for them, prioritize them, we start the ripple effect of feeling like a different person. And we really can't actualize health or happiness without these foundational principles. And I am fully committed to believing that, because I've seen it not only in my own life, but in the people I care about and the clients that I work with, that you can't shortcut the pathway to health without these fundamentals. And just shining a flashlight on it. Nobody goes to the point in their life where they say, I'm going to gain 100 pounds. I'm going to feel like garbage. I want to have all these things that bring us to the breakdown of where we want to be. We wake up one morning and we're like, how did I get here? And it's just because our attention shifted onto things that, took us off track. So it's more about taking that attention back, shining the flashlight on our core fundamental habits that can help us really get that grounding and that stability. I often talk about it with people as, when we are not eating well, not sleeping well, not practicing these fundamentals, we're like a lineman in a football game on one foot in stilettos. I mean, you can get knocked over like that. When you are really cultivating these fundamentals of making sure we're eating well, we're sleeping well, we're moving frequently, we're hydrating our body, we're managing our stress, and it's never going to be about perfection or perfect balance. But when we're really cultivating them, we become that same lineman on, you know, all squared off and ready. And so you may be able to kind of sway us a little bit, but it's really tough to knock us over. You know, these fundamentals are the source of our energy. And if you remember me saying, I write out my energy, work, and love identity every day. You know, we spend so much time thinking about time management. We think about, you know, becoming more productive. If we focused more on energy management, like, we become this different person, instead of trying to restructure our time or reorganize. And not that those things aren't important, but if we focused on having more energy, it's amazing what we can get done in our life. So those fundamentals are, as you heard me say, sleeping, eating, moving, how we're hydrating, and how we're managing our stress. Energy drives our lives, and the best version of us is created through these fundamentals. Next slide, please. So let's talk a little bit about the first one, sleep. You know, it was up until this last year, I was doing a master's program in coaching, optimized coaching. And I always thought that food changed everything. And I still believe that, you know, food it's either building us up or it's breaking us down. And we're going to talk about food in just a minute. But we spent a really significant amount of time researching sleep and the science behind sleep and the research behind sleep. In fact, if you see my finger, I'm wearing an Oura ring that actually tracks my sleep and measures my deep sleep and my REM sleep, because sleep is actually the foundation of our health. And, you know, we go through a good part of our life thinking that we can compromise on our sleep or we can shortcut it, or, you know, we say those things. I remember thinking, oh, I can get by on 4 to 5 hours of sleep. We actually have a higher likelihood of surviving a lightning strike than we do functioning in a metabolically healthy state when we go below 7 hours of sleep. So, you know, when we get below that 7 hours, it's really hard for our body to function metabolically well. So typically our body is reacting metabolically as if we were a type 2 diabetic. Our mindset changes, because the shortest pathway to a healthy mind is through the breath and through sleep. And so we can't function mentally well when we are compromised with sleep. You know, think about it. They use sleep deprivation as torture, as a war crime. So sleep is so fundamental, and we are hacking it, or we are, what's the word I'm looking for? We are really, really damaging our sleep with a lot of the things that we do in our life today. You know, our digital addiction, our falling asleep with a TV on, or a TV going in our room all night, reading on a Kindle or even an iPad. You know, there's the iPad effect where reading on an iPad reduces your melatonin by 50%, and the onset of that melatonin by, it delays it by 50%. So, or 50% longer. So we want to remember that this digital addiction that we have, whether it's TV or our phones, or are really hijacking our brains. Then there's the snooze button in the morning. When we hit that snooze button in the morning because we didn't prioritize sleep the night before, our brain, when we wake up, hit that snooze button, our brain wants to go back to deep sleep or a REM cycle. And it doesn't know that we have that snooze button set for 8 or 9 minutes and going to wake up again. So when we wake up after hitting the snooze, our brain is still fighting to get that sleep. So it's no wonder we wake up in a fog. I actually tell my clients that our day today started last night. So we look at, when I'm working with someone, their AM and PM bookends. You know, what are you doing at night because that's where your day actually starts. The time we go to sleep and when we wake up and how many hours we get in there and the quality of our sleep really determines a lot about the next day. So our day doesn't start in the morning when our alarm goes off. It actually started the night before when we go to sleep. So we really want to prioritize 7 hours of sleep. We want to make sure that we're, shutting down our electronics, getting away from those blue screens, at least an hour before bed. If you like to read before you go to sleep, I strongly encourage you to use a low light, nothing too bright, and using a good old-fashioned book, because that light, even from our even though they say they have the filters on there, they still can impact our circadian rhythm. So we really want to make sure that not only are we prioritizing that sleep, but we're actually setting ourselves up for success with not having all those other distractions. Next slide, please. Food and hydration. So I often separate these because they can be very different, but they also work in tandem. Food, as I said, changes everything. It's either building us up or it's breaking us down. And when we believe some of the things that we're told about food is, we can get away with calorie counting, we can get away with what's healthy. And, let's be honest, there's a lot of different perspectives when it comes to nutrition. So looking at paying attention to, how do you feel when you eat the food that you're eating? Are you feeling energized and vital after a meal, or are you feeling sluggish and, in the food coma? Are you having the energy to get through your day, to do the things that you love? Because remember, I said earlier, life is what feeds you, food is what fuels you. We've got it backwards in our culture to think that, food has become like up on this pedestal, that it's our entertainment, it's our love, it fills the void where we actually need to fill it with something from life. A lot of the work that I do is around primary foods and secondary foods. And without going into that too long, when I look at, have people actually make a list of what feeds you, like what makes you feel alive in life. What are the things that light you up? What are the things that make you feel connection? What are the things that make you feel awe? What are the things that, how do you feel when you're moving your body, when you're in a good open conversation with someone? It's when we have a void in those things that we want to fill it with something else. So, and very often in my work, it will come to food. People wonder why they have a food addiction, or they crave certain things and they have their comfort foods. And, we can't really break that habit with, when I feel sad, I eat, or I'm stressed, I eat. We're using food to fix what food can't fix. And so when we think about food being the foundation, we also have to remember it is really meant to fuel our body so we can lead healthy, vibrant lives. It's not meant to be our medication, our comfort, our soother, but we're taught that from such an early age. And, I won't go into one of my favorite stories about that, but, we're really taught from infancy that when we're sad, we fix it with food. And so we want to start to make that shift from understanding that food is information for our body. So it actually activates the levers of our health. So, we talk about, I hear this all the time, especially in some of the work that I do with health conditions. People talk about, well, it's genetic, my family has diabetes, or my family has this health condition. Our genes load the gun, but the choices that we make with our food, with our sleep, with our habits actually pull the trigger. So we have to think about, is the food that I'm eating actually fueling me, or is it fueling something else? And, our addiction to hyper sweet foods or hyper palatable foods, processed foods, convenience foods, we have to take that step back and say, what is it costing us? So when it comes to food, looking at, whole foods, real foods, foods that, if you look at the label, there's simple ingredients or one ingredient, or don't even have a label at all. Look at, how do you feel? I could go into the conversation about, the different types of diets, and there is no one perfect diet for everyone. However, we cannot obtain true health through the foods that are promoted as healthy in our culture. The myth of moderation, the myth of food pyramids, and the myth of, some of those calories in, calories out type beliefs are actually making us sicker. So we want to think about getting back to, how do I feel when I eat this food? And is it building me up, or is it making me feel worse? And if you're curious, and I really believe in the power of intuition, we all have that voice that says, well, maybe it's dairy, maybe it's sugar. It's always sugar. But listen to that voice. Listen to that inside that says, hey, am I feeling my best, and am I eating the right foods? And that's where I work with looking at a food log. I don't write meal plans for people. First of all, that's not in the state of West Virginia within my scope of practice, nor would it be something that I would want to do, because when we are told what to eat, we have no ownership there. When I look at someone's food log, I learn a lot about them, but it also helps, really understand the relationship between their food and what's going on in their body. So we have to understand that food is information, and it changes everything, and it is our source of fuel. So we're either putting good quality fuel into our body so we can have that energy and vitality, or we're putting something in there that is, making us sluggish, kind of like putting the wrong thing in your gas tank. And it does change everything. As I said, and I won't spend a lot of time with this, but I struggled with depression a significant part of my life. And it wasn't until I really understood how much food played an impact in that. That also changes everything. When we are dehydrated, we are, it affects our sleep, it affects our digestion, it affects our brain. It just really has a big impact on how our body functions. And we are a culture of chronically dehydrated people. First of all, when you're dehydrated, often you think you're hungry. It will really affect the mood. And like I said, it has that ripple effect over our total health. So if people were to really start to just hydrate with water, it's not hydrating with artificial sweeteners. It's not hydrating with a soda or a diet soda, or even coffee or tea. Not to say we can't have coffee or tea, but our primary source of hydration needs to come from good old H2O. There's really no shortcut around it. People say they don't like water, or they like it to have some sweetness. That's because you're hyper addicted to sweet, and we need to break that cycle. So, just acclimating to getting back to real fresh water is so important in our overall health. I feel like a completely different person, even in my morning when I wake up, if I didn't drink my water the day before. It's just amazing how all of these fundamentals really work synchronistically with our body. Okay, you can go to the next slide. Movement is really important as well. Functionally moving our body in ways that it's designed to move, stretching, opening up the body, and I know some of the people who are on this call have far more expertise in this with movement and how it impacts our body and our health and our mind. But moving our body in a way that it opens it up. We are designed to move. We are not designed to be sedentary. So when we are spending our days sitting, there's a really great book out there called Sitting Kills Moving Heals. And it was written by a NASA scientist about the degradation on our body and our health from sitting. And we are in a culture that's prolonged sitting. We sit at our desks, we sit at home watching TV, we sit in our cars stuck in traffic. And so we end up being very sedentary. And we actually are, not only do we benefit from exercise, there's great research around what exercise does not only to our metabolic health, but to our mental health, but we're also meant to move throughout our day. In fact, there's actually more benefit from 3 1-mile walks in your day than a 3-mile walk. We want to get past that once and done exercise. We want to start moving throughout the day. In fact, that same scientist, I can't remember her name, who wrote that book, says even if you just get up, stand up and sit down every 30 minutes and start there, you're actually giving your body a gift of movement, because our physiology affects our psychology. So it all plays into the integral parts of being an optimized version of ourselves. So movement is really important. My ring will actually will remind me to move. We have all of these different ways to measure or to prompt us to do it, but we actually have to step into action and do it. So, set some goals for your day, but become that person who, gets up and moves more and sits less. It's really, really an important part of that. So I don't want to spend a lot of time on movement, but we really do need to move our bodies more. Think about it. The more you are sitting, just even paying attention to your moods, how it changes. And when you get up and change your posture, it can have that really quickly a powerful impact over your mood. And then think about what it's doing on the levels that you just can't see. It's a really powerful thing. Okay, next slide, please. The next is managing your stress. And this, can be a big thing. And, the reality is we all have stress, especially right now. We're all experiencing as a collective a different type of stress, in our homes, in our work. And there's so much uncertainty happening right now. And that just naturally creates stress. So ways to manage it. We're never going to be free of, totally stress-free all the time. We're going to have stress-free times, but life is that it hands us stress. So we have to have some tools in our toolbox on how to manage that stress. And managing that stress can come in many different forms, and these are just a few. But understanding that these also become a very short pathway to feeling differently, to improving our state, and then can have that ripple effect over everything else as we close that gap between who we are and who we really want to be. So first of all, the shortest pathway to gaining control in any situation is through the breath. And, we are creatures of oxygen deprivation typically in our culture. We hold our breath, we forget to breathe, although we think that it's something that we just do naturally. And reminding ourselves to take some deep breaths can be a really powerful resource in our toolbox. Whether you practice deep breathing, whether you're practicing, different breathing techniques. I often will start my clients with just a box breathing exercise where they're breathing in for 4 counts, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, hold that out for 4. do that a couple times and you've basically just meditated for a minute, because a lot of people freak out with that word meditation. So just, coming back to the breath is such a powerful resource. And I know many of you on this call are also already believers in that. But breathing, getting oxygen into our body it's life, and when we are oxygen deprived, it really can, over a long term, can impact. So we have some things that, if I tie back to sleep, we actually, I'll give you a little thing to kind of think we're very bizarre and laugh at. We actually tape our mouths shut at night. Did a lot of research on oxygen and how, if you're a mouth breather, what that can do to your overall health, not only your oral, your mouth, but what it does by oxygen deprivation throughout the night. And that's a lot of times why we wake up groggy. So we actually tape our mouth with the special paper tape. And, it just makes such a difference in how we sleep. Becomes the joke with some of our friends, but the research is really strong on it, and it gets more oxygen into our bloodstream. And right now, in the midst of a respiratory crisis in this pandemic, getting more oxygen into our system is critically important. So taking that deep breath, finding ways to get more oxygen into your system really can help calm that central nervous system and have a ripple effect over your health. Gratitude. I am a very big believer in cultivating gratitude in our life. And often with clients, I'll have them start just with a gratitude journal. Focusing on what is right in our life instead of what's wrong is a game changer. And we seem to be hardwired to look at the negative, and we have to cultivate consistency with looking at the positive. So creating a gratitude practice is a really great way to manage stress and cultivate some grounding in our balance. And it really helps us look at, the more we start to look at what's right, the more that we start to diminish what's wrong. And it's a really powerful tool. And just doing it once a week can be a great help, but a daily practice of gratitude, thinking it and writing it, is a really powerful thing. Mindfulness, also talking, about being more aware in the moment, meditation, things like that are really powerful. So I think that finding mindfulness through journaling, as I saw Carol just put that on there, finding mindfulness through deep breathing exercises, through walking in nature, there's a lot of ways to cultivate that. And again, it is a great gift to optimizing our health. We often think of these things as more abstract and separate from our health, but they're an integral part of creating the healthier you as a whole person. And laughter. My husband is probably the funniest person I know, and has brought so much laughter into my life. And it can take you from the worst mood to the best in a second. So right now, turn off the news, turn on something funny, whatever you find humorous. It just can add some lightness to your life. And again, cultivating happiness is a practice. And I see Carol wrote on there that children's laughter is the best. Absolutely. So find your source of laughter and what brings you joy. And that starts to create that ripple effect for us. Okay, next slide, please. As you can see, I could probably talk about this for hours. So I'm trying to be mindful of our time together. So it's great to create this identity and start to think about these fundamentals, but like right now, we're in a very challenging time. So we want to start to, often when we set a goal, and when I'm working with someone and they're deciding that they want to be healthier, and we make that decision and we're ready and we're off and running, we have to prepare for challenges before they show up. It's real easy to say we're going to be able to handle it, but really cultivating some ways to have some resources before those challenges show up and know how we're going to handle them. And when challenges arise, looking at what those first of all, we always know what the challenges are going to be most of the time. Now, I don't think any of us really saw this coming, but, if we were already cultivating how to handle some of our challenges from a grounded, balanced place, by just getting curious with them, like, what could this mean? Or what else could this mean? And looking at some ways to close that gap. So look at that healthiest version of you and how would they show up in those challenges. One of the things that I tell my clients is we have to look beyond the moment of consumption. So at that first, I think it's Mike Tyson who says, everybody has a game plan until they get punched in the face. We can all have a really good game plan until we get punched in the face. And whatever our knee-jerk reaction when we get that challenge, we've got to start to learn how to shift that a little bit. So if your first line of defense when you feel like things are hard or you're challenged is to go to the fastest way to feeling good, which is often, eating or vegging out or digital addiction or alcohol or something that we know ultimately, even though if it may have a role in our life, can break us down. And that's probably the worst time to go to those things. Again, remember, life is what feeds you, food is what fuels you. We want to look beyond the moment of consumption. How am I going to feel after this? So if it's somebody who says, oh, I'm having a bad day, give me that donut. We've all had those days, right? And you decide to have the donut, and then afterwards you feel guilty, you feel sluggish, you feel the sugar rush, so we want to start to, first of all, pay attention when you do have that breakdown and you make the unhealthy choice. Ask yourself, how do I feel? And the more you pay attention, that awareness, the more you pay attention, this isn't how I want to feel. So we have to start looking beyond the moment of consumption. How is that going to make us feel? And is there another choice? We also need to be honest with ourselves. What are the things that challenge us? And, what do I need more? What do I need more of? Or what do I need to do instead of this? Or where can I learn how to shift this? We have to get really clear. Is this way working for me? Or is there another pathway? It all comes back to that N=1. How are you feeling? And how are the things that you're doing supporting the way you want to feel? Or are they taking you away from it? I won't riff on that for a second, but so it's always about that awareness, even in hindsight, like, oh, wow, I just managed my stress through a little too much of this or that. And it didn't make me feel so good. So what would I want to do next time? Or what could I do differently? And, because we really want to start focusing on things that make us feel healthy, vibrant, and alive. And so is there another choice? Do I go for the donut or do I go for a walk? Or do I get something to drink and wait 15 minutes to see if that craving passes? Do I find stress relief through, a couple drinks at happy hour? Or do I go do some deep breathing and go for a walk? If this shows up, then I do this. And start to create a new algorithm for when the challenge arises and what you decide to do. So it's all about, finding the behavior or finding the choice that supports you and that highest identity. Next slide, please. So we want to cultivate curiosity. Here's one of my favorite things about the fundamentals. So if you have a moment where you feel really off, or you made a choice that you're not proud of, or you behaved in a way that you're not happy with, the first line of defense there needs to be, am I well resourced? And what does that mean? So for me, when I'm feeling like I'm off, or I'm more reactive, or I'm sad, I take a step back and I go through those fundamentals. How did I sleep last night? How have I been eating? Did I drink water today? Do I need to go for a walk? Because when we are practicing those fundamentals, I call that being well resourced. You know, am I practicing some good mindfulness? We meditate every day. I think we just hit like 500 and I think we're at like 515 days without missing. So, and that's been a huge game changer for us, but it's not the only tool in our toolbox. You know, it's looking at the different things that make you feel like your foundation is solid. So asking yourself, am I well resourced? You know, oh man, I didn't sleep so well last night. So no wonder I'm a little reactive today. As soon as we realize that one of those fundamentals was off, then we can strengthen the other ones. So what areas are lacking? Okay, so I didn't sleep well and I haven't drank any water today. So then I'm going to start drinking water. Obviously, we're not going to go to bed probably if it's noon. And then I can go for a walk, or I can move my body. I can make sure I eat a healthy lunch so I can, you know, kind of counteract for or counterbalance where I was lacking yesterday or last night or in the moment. So always going down to, am I well resourced and what needs work? So if we can in that moment start to say, wait, you know, I'm feeling not so great, it's always connected to one of those fundamentals. You know, what is it that I need to do? And if it's managing my stress, do I need to have a conversation? Do I need to take a time out? If it's related to water, do I need to have something to drink? Do I need to prioritize going to bed tonight? Control what's controllable. You know, there's a lot of uncertainty in the world right now. And so there's a lot that we can't control. And if we're focused on what we can't control, then we're going to be out of control. We have to control what's controllable. Go to those foundational principles, go to those fundamentals. And it's amazing how the ripple effect is created, because a healthy lifestyle is never effortless. I keep a magic wand in my desk that when people start to say, well, if only I could, or, you know, I want to get to my goal and, you know, not have to think about this anymore. So I'll pull out that. I'm like, I'm sorry, this is broken. Because a healthy lifestyle requires effort. You know, every single day we have to face choices. And those choices are either going to build you up or they're going to break you down. There is no Switzerland there. You know, we're never going to get to the point where it's just effortless. Now, we will get to a point where it's less of a chore to go for that walk or make a healthy meal. You couldn't pay me to live the lifestyle I did when I was 100 pounds heavier. Not in a million years. Doesn't mean some of those habits don't creep in once in a while, but it always requires effort. Even at this point in the game, you know, my husband and I are a great team in a healthy lifestyle, and we, you know, kind of push each other outside of those comfort zones from time to time, because it's never going to be a mindless choice to be healthy, especially in the world that we live in today. So we have to accept that too, that, or have that level of acceptance that being healthy requires effort, but it is the best gift that we can give ourselves. Okay, next slide, please. So it's about taking action. You know, we have to create a win-win in those moments, because as I said earlier, our identity is our repeated beingness, moment to moment to moment. So in those moments where we're challenged, you know, think about, what do I need and what's important now? And if we have that identity so crystal clear in our mind of who we really want to be as that healthy person, so when we can easily think about, or it becomes more easy to think about who we want to be and what's important now. What do I need? Okay, I need some water. I need to get to bed early. I need to, you know, do something that is going to be part of that foundation to make me feel healthy, vibrant, and alive, or even better than I do in this moment. And then we have to do the work. So there's a difference between I should and what I'm willing to do, because we can should all over ourselves and feel like crap, or we can say, you know what, I'm not willing to go for a walk right now because it's pouring. Guess newsflash, the rain won't hurt you, but but what are you willing to do? Okay, I'm going to get up and I'm going to go up and down the stairs a few times to get some energy into my body. Remember, we generate our energy. One of my favorite quotes is, a power plant doesn't have energy, it generates energy. And that's the same with our body. We don't just have energy. We don't have motivation. We don't have good health. We have to generate that. And so that's taking ownership and responsibility of what we're willing to do moment by moment by moment. So what do I need? What's important now? That creates our win-win. And then we need to be accountable to the process. You know, saying we're going to do something and then having someone that can hold us accountable. You know, that's where I love being a coach. I get to really help people create their masterpiece days, create that optimized health, and really generate it by checking in with those small, tiny wins that we have along the way. The things that you say you want to be, are you actually embodying them? And, you know, what can we do better? What needs work? What's one thing that you can do? What do you need to stop doing? Be accountable to the process. You know, it's not our goals that get us in trouble. It's our systems and how we cultivate that consistency. You know, our success is all about consistency of those fundamentals. And, you know, my husband and I have these conversations every day. We prioritize our time. So that's something that's part of our toolbox, is really sitting together every morning, having a cup of coffee after we take a walk or work out. We start our day from there, and really, you know, having that accountability of each other to talk about, like, hey, you know, I feel like I need to step it up a little bit with my sleep, or I need to, you know, make sure I take those timeouts to breathe throughout the day. Or we started this new thing with cold showers at the end of our shower, and using that. So, you know, really finding someone to help you be accountable to the process. It's really important. Okay, you can flip to the next slide. Because to optimize our health, we want to create that healthy vision of the ideal that we want to achieve. We need to generate that energy to be that person through the fundamentals, and then be, my favorite quote is, of all times, is Gandhi's, "Be the change you wish to see in the world." And, you know, a lot of people, it's just that rote routine of, it's kind of that quote, and, you know, it's become watered down. But really being that change that we wish to see in the world starts with who you are being. And that identity of that healthiest version of you, moment by moment by moment, is what will be the ripple effect in the world of creating a healthier you and the people around you. Because we have the best impact on other people by being who we want to be and who we want them to be. You know, we can't expect someone else to show up or do the things that we aren't willing to do. So it's really time to step into ownership of creating that healthier you. And it's not about being overwhelmed by the things that I've talked about. It's like shining the flashlight on, you know, what is it that I'm doing in these areas, and what is it that I need to do? What is it that I know intuitively is going to bring me closer to actualizing and optimizing that healthier version of me, choice by choice by choice. Last slide. So if you decide that you want to reach out and, you know, get some support, you know, here's my information, and certainly we can share that. But I'd love to open this up now. Jennifer, if you want to ask a question, if there's anybody who has any questions for me, or. I know I spoke for a long time, so you're probably all like, oh, she's done.
I have some questions.
Yes, Umes.
So I saw your picture when you were like, and like, did you see any health disadvantage or like health effects after you started losing your weight?
Health disadvantage from losing weight?
Or like health side effect or anything?
No, I mean, the side effects were all good. You know, losing that weight really gave me back energy and health, and I think longevity. So I did it in a way initially that was kind of a dieting approach, but really looking at making sure I was eating in a way to fuel my body and protect my health was really important. So no health, negative health. Did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
I believe that was you.
I know. It's a lot different, right? Anybody else have any questions? I'm reading the chats. Thank you all. It's so wonderful to be part of this.
Also, can I ask you a last question?
Yes.
So while you started monitoring your weight and like losing your weight, did you take any counseling or you just started by your own?
So I did it initially through like an organized weight loss plan. So it kind of, I know you're not from our culture. We have like there's a lot of diet programs out there. So that was how I started it. But it was like through accountability and awareness through that program. And that led me down the rabbit hole of really studying. I encourage everyone who wants to create more health to really do some research on their own, because we are in an echo chamber of misinformation, and a lot of the information that we hear about health and dieting and all of the things that we get, I call it soundbite nutrition, are outdated, not supported by science, and maybe have worked for one person and they just keep sharing it, but it might not work for you. So there is, I think, guidance and accountability is helpful, but also doing our own research, because that helps us take ownership over our own health.
Thank you.
I see a question on here. How long did it take me to lose the 100 pounds? Thanks for asking that, KJ. My first, I think, 87 pounds took a year, or a little over a year. And then over time after that, it was, it took, it just came off. So I kind of didn't quantify that timeline, but and I see somebody else having a question about menopause. I'm at that point of my life as well. I'll be 51 next month. So as we age, that changes. I've, from my lowest point to where I am now, there's been a little bit of a fluctuation. I don't like people to look at how fast can they get there. It's more about who am I repeatedly being and how can I show up to. I think it's real important to step into being a healthy person. And as I said, the people who fixate on the scale tend to take longer to get to their goal if they get there, because there are so many other measures of body composition changes and health changes that the scale can't give us. I've had people who have gone from a size 14 to a size 2 and their weight didn't change at all. So think about that. If we're fixated on the scale, then if she had been fixated on the scale, she would have gotten frustrated and given up. And that creates a whole ripple effect in our body to a resistance.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I see Gail was commenting on a social site about her gut issues. Definitely recommend a gluten-free diet for just about everybody. I don't think gluten is any of our friends from a mental health perspective to a gut perspective, which are connected. And taking gluten out. So first and foremost, we have to take out the processed foods. And that's where we start to, and then work on the fundamentals, because that brings up a really great point where if people are trying to just fix a symptom, like a gut issue, or I see someone else asked about a menopausal belly, we can target those areas. However, you can't fix that without fixing those fundamentals first, or working on those fundamentals. Once we start, because sometimes that menopausal belly and our hormonal shift comes from not sleeping well, or not, not moving our body frequently, not just from an exercise calorie burn perspective, but from, being in a more fluid movement throughout our day. So it's all, yes, there's things that we can do. Take gluten out of the diet, take dairy out of the diet, absolutely everybody should take sugar out of their diet. It's toxic, it's addictive. But we also have to look at all of those other moving parts as well. Any other questions? I'm trying to see if there's any other questions on here.
Hey, Kathy.
Yes?
This is Beth. I was wondering, what would you say most recently has been one of your bigger challenges as far as maintaining change?
One of my biggest challenges, probably our shift from, so we have, I personally speaking, we have some tools in our toolbox that we use, like we go to a place for alternative wellness, Thrive in Wheeling, which is one of our favorite places. So when that shut down, that took away some of our favorite things for self-care for us. And for me, the exercise. So I've been really focused on getting my movement throughout the day. I'm working from home, loving that, by the way. But I also, I'm not going to the gym 3 days a week like we were, my husband and I do CrossFit together. And when the gym closed, that took that kind of movement away for us. And he's more dedicated to getting up and his push-ups, and he's amazing with his dedication to his fitness. But it took me a little while to get back into moving and really exercising. So we're walking typically in the morning and then in the evening, and then I'm trying to keep my movement throughout the day, but probably exercise has been my biggest challenge. And so it's something that I have to keep reminding myself why it's important. And, being in menopause and all the different changes is one of those anchoring thoughts for me.
Okay. Thanks, Kath.
You're welcome. Anybody else? Umas?
So, do you have any suggestion for like someone like me? Because I do not gain weight how much I eat, but at the same time, sometimes it just makes me so clumsy, so lazy. Do you think diet has effect on that?
So I missed part of what you said. I heard you say you have trouble gaining weight, and then I missed that other part.
I do not have problem on gaining weight because I do exercises and like I never gain weight. But at the same time, sometimes I don't know, my mental status is not well, or sometimes I just feel weakness for no reason. Diet has any effect on that?
Absolutely. I think, and that's a great question to kind of pull back to going through that checklist of those fundamentals. If we're not feeling like our energetic best, or, whether it's emotionally or physically, then going back to, how am I sleeping? Am I getting a good, healthy amount of sleep? And here's a real quick thing about sleep. If you're in bed 7 hours, you are not getting 7 hours of sleep. So we need to maybe extend that, because there's nights that, because my ring tracks it, we're in bed 8 hours, but I may have only gotten, 7 hours, if that, and it wasn't all quality sleep. So first and foremost, go to the sleep. Are you sleeping, and in that circadian rhythm too. So, if you're staying up till 2 a.m. but sleeping till 10 a.m., that's not the same as going to sleep at 10 p.m. and getting up at 6 or 7 a.m. Our circadian rhythm is hardwired to our biology. So turning off things earlier, getting a good night's sleep, and then going to, we can also go to the simplest things, like, am I hydrating enough? Am I, eating food that's mentally good for me or physically good for me? It's not about gaining weight always for us. For me, I can eat sugar that doesn't cause me to gain weight, but it still can make me sad.
Yeah.
So just looking at those things and go, where can I maybe do a little bit better? And it's not about perfection. It's about what can I do a little bit better with this.
Yeah, thank you. And one more question. So what do you think, like, do you think 8 hours of sleep is enough, or it varies with ages too?
It does vary. Again, it's when you wake up, if you feel well rested and vibrant, that's great. So between 7 hours is the minimum.
Mhm.
Once we go over 10 hours, it's often as detrimental as if we go under 7 hours. So we don't want too much sleep either. So people who, I have a client who is sleeping like 14 hours a day, and she's like, I should feel great. I'm like, no, you're actually overdoing it. So, too much sleep can be bad too, but it's also very important to look at when you're sleeping.
So my sleep pattern is kind of weird because sometimes when I sleep 8 hours, I do not feel great. I do not feel rich. But sometimes when I sleep only 5 hours, I just feel so energetic. I don't know. It has been since I was a kid. I don't know.
Okay, so that's where we look at, and we could talk about this separately as well, but that's where we look at, like, what are we doing leading up to bed? Are we, if you're someone who doesn't get good rest, it could all, there's a lot of different factors that could be there, but are we cultivating calm? Turning off like the digital stuff before we go to bed, take a shower. There's things that you can do to try to get rest. But if you're sleeping 8 hours and feel like you're kind of in a good place before you go to sleep, then I would look at the other resources or the other fundamentals. Like, okay, so maybe it's, I had a client tell me that when they took sugar out of their diet and processed foods, they felt amazing and they slept amazing. And when they had it again, they were restless in their sleep. They had more sleep disturbances, even though they had the same amount of sleep or thought, they were waking up feeling kind of wiped out.
Yeah. Thank you. It was helpful.
You're welcome. Anyone else? I know we're probably getting close to the end of time. Oh, wow.
Kathy, I find that when people take things out of their diet, whether it be caffeine or sugars, you have to recommend things to go back in. And for many people, it's the fatigue versus adrenal stressors, that stimulant that's going on. So sometimes I recommend people taking B vitamins, exercise for the energy instead of drinking the useless calories and sugary substances for their energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, artificial sources of energy, whether it's caffeine. Caffeine can have a good place, but if you're waking up and having a cup of coffee in the morning, that's not a problem. But if you're using caffeine or Red Bull or any of those things or sugar for energy, then it can spike you and then drop you. So certainly that's where we would look at. First and foremost, I go to the foundation, but then I think overstimulating the adrenals. Are you in adrenal fatigue? Yes, that's a whole different conversation. But yeah, and replacing it. So here's kind of one of the things that I tell people too. If at 2 o'clock in the afternoon you are feeling like you need caffeine to kind of get through the rest of your day, I challenge everybody to drink a full 12-ounce glass of water or a bottle of water. And it's just that you're dehydrated. It's just like your plants in your house, when they start to feel dehydrated, they start to
wilt. And our brain
wilt
is first.
Absolutely.
Needs water.
And
Yes.
so do we. Yeah.
Yes,
and
yes.
So do we.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy.
All right. Thank you, everybody. I think that we're right up at that time. And Jennifer, do you want to,
Okay,
or
Jen.
Beth, anybody want to take over?
Go ahead, Jennifer.
Okay, I'm trying to unmute. All right. Let me get on here. I was trying to, oops, stop our video or, there we
There we
go.
go. Thank you, everybody.